Well, welcome to our June the 27th.
Microphone, Mayor, microphone.
Thought it might be easier if I stayed silent. So welcome again to our June 27th council meeting. Acknowledge we're holding this on the traditional lands of the Klama Nation. And we'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Councillor.
I'll move that the agenda for the June 27th, 2024 special council meeting be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Isakson. All in favor? Passed unanimously. The adoption of the minutes. We have the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 20th. Moved and seconded by Councillors Palm and Almeida. All in favor? Passed unanimously. We'll now move to bylaws. 3.1 is the Property Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund Bylaw 2755.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Following up on Council direction during the 2024 financial planning process to establish a Property Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund. This fund will be established through bylaw. And so we're presenting this bylaw for first three readings. Council direction was also to deposit 1.6 million to the credit of this reserve in 2024 from 2024 property taxes. And so this is just really the first step in the process of establishing the reserve fund. For a little bit more background, the reserve fund must be used for the purposes the bylaw outlines, which is to stabilize property taxes in the event of a change to the major industry assessment. It could be increased should the assessment for major industry increase, or it could be used, it could be decreased should major industry assessment go down or be fully eliminated. So that's just background from the discussions we had during the financial planning process. And further background on this reserve is that it will earn interest, and the interest must be used for the purposes of the reserve. Following the adoption of this bylaw, we will also bring forward an updated reserve policy and include this specific reserve in the reserve policy, but you won't see that until this bylaw is fully adopted. I'll open it up to the floor for any questions.
Seeing no questions. Yes.
I can make the motion.
Please.
I move that Property Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund Bylaw 2755, 2024 be read a first time.
Second by Councillor Almeida. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that Property Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund Bylaw 2755, 2024 be read a second time.
Second by Councillor Almeida. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
And I move that Property Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund Bylaw 2755, 2024 be read a third time.
Second by Councillor Almeida. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to 3.2, which is Council Procedure Bylaw 2756. Who will we have speaking?
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you. So as you know, the procedure bylaw has come to you in a number of in two workshop sessions. Ms. Lonsky was here to assist in facilitating us through those, or facilitating you through those workshops. At the second workshop, she brought a new bylaw for you to review based on your discussion from the first workshop. And then attached to the agenda is the bylaw based on all the feedback she received from yourselves. So everything in the report is, I think, fairly self-explanatory. Staff do recognize that council may have questions and feedback about the draft bylaw in the agenda package. which is why this has not come for readings today. This is for council to provide that feedback so that staff can then provide a draft bylaw to come back to council for readings. And then I'll just also remind council that once it receives first reading, there's still opportunity for the bylaw to be edited. After second reading, we do issue public notice. And then there's third reading and adoption. So if we use every meeting between or starting in July, it likely won't be adopted until September or October. So I'll open it up to council for the questions and feedback.
Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, this particular item on our agenda tonight has generated a lot of comments from the public when they saw it first appear. And I have some concerns about, in terms of due process, making sure the public has ample time to review. So because of a number of issues that I've read and referred to, I am going to ask that council defer this until next Tuesday for further discussion so that we can fully wrap our head around this. The public has more time and we can weigh in with some comments that would be more appropriate at that time, Your Worship.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott.
Just a point of clarification, I don't think we have a meeting scheduled next Tuesday, so are you referring to Tuesday the 9th?
I'm referring to the 9th.
To the next committee of the whole, correct?
Committee of the whole, yes.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Dout, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do.
All right. The
Okay,
floor is yours.
This procedure bylaw process didn't start yesterday, and it didn't start last Friday. Went through my notes today, and it actually goes a lot farther back than the report that's in front of us talks about. Actually, on May 30th, 2023, the Committee of the Whole directed staff to prepare amendments to the procedure bylaw and listed 8 items after strategic planning discussions. Part of the strategic planning process, we went through a number of discussions there, decided in May of 2023 that we needed a new procedure bylaw and asked staff to come back with some changes. And staff did. It only took until December the 5th Committee of the Whole meeting for staff to come back for some changes to this same procedure bylaw that staff brought to council. Council discussed them and decided that we needed to study them some more. And we went on and we've had at least 2 more workshops, May 17th and May 30th, to discuss the procedure bylaws. All of those were open public meetings that anybody could watch and attend, and anybody can go back and look at and refresh their minds. And then here we are today, June 27th, 2024, with a new draft procedures bylaw. And I'd actually like to get into it rather than postponing it for a week or 2 weeks to the middle of July to talk about where we're going to go, and finding out that in order to do it, we're actually going to have to start talking about the procedure bylaw at some point. So I've got a list of about 1.5 pages or 2 pages of amendments that I could bring to it, having spent about 5 hours today going through and comparing the existing procedure bylaw with the new draft that we have. And it took a while because there are a lot of changes. But I would rather go forward and try to get some work done on it. If we do it according to staff's timeline that they have right now, we're maybe going to have a procedure bylaw figured out by October of 2024. And if it doesn't go that smoothly, and if we keep delaying it, who knows when we're going to be finished? Maybe October 2026. But I'd rather go forward with it and actually talk about the details in it so we can figure out what council wants to do with their procedure bylaw.
Councillor Isakson.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councillor Dowd and Councillor Palm, even though maybe they are speaking to different sides of the motion. I also have a number of notes that I would like to either propose amendments on, or the difficulty is there are some items on here that I think would benefit from more of a workshop conversation as opposed to straight up motions. And I would rather be in committee of the whole, and the process that I would even prefer is if depending on who's chairing the meeting or what have you, maybe just focusing on the items that we do want to address, similar to when we went back into committee for the strategic planning session, where at the beginning we're like, okay, what items do people actually want to address? Have those listed, and people make their cases and have shows of hands and work through them. But I don't think we're set up here to have a discussion that way. So I support the motion from Councillor Palm to defer this to the 9th.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So our last workshop, it was a lot of new wording in the draft, and it was hard for me to read it, understand exactly what the impacts would be, and be comfortable with it all in the same meeting. So I've had some time to reflect, and I do also wish we had another crack at, adjusting some of the draft language. So I support the motion, and I also wonder if we could put on the agenda for the committee whole on the 9th, a small workshop in the middle of our meeting to try and address those. If people are comfortable at the end of that workshop, we may be able to get right back on track with the timing for the subsequent council meeting on the, well, they would still have to have time for it to draft a bylaw. So that's probably not actually possible. But anyway, there are some things that were difficult to absorb and be comfortable with in the one session that we had with some of the draft language. And I do support the motion on the table right now.
I'm going to also support the motion for the deferment. I think there are legal issues that have never raised before, and I think there's an opportunity between now and July the 9th to have either a open mic event with whatever members of the public would like to come out and express their opinions on this. And so we had discussed this, that there are numerous forms that be taken, from coffee with the mayor to a council meeting in general with public that are interested. So I'll talk with staff and see if that can be done before the July 9th meeting. Our CAO has a comment.
Yeah, through the chair. Sorry, that came out quite loud. One of the things I might suggest is, at committee of the whole, you recommend that council makes decisions, and what would be helpful for us is to actually have a special council meeting so you can make motions about what it is you want to see changed. So I just would like you to maybe consider that. I don't know if I messed up the motion, but because one of the challenges we have with the workshop style is we're trying to hear all the feedback from you, get your direction, try and put words down that we think meets your direction, and now what would be helpful is to find out where the specifics are that you either agree on, disagree on, and get some clarity. So I'm just throwing that out there for your consideration. Thank you.
Sure. Just on that point, for myself, I require more input from the public before I can get clarity on what I would like to see in the procedure bylaw. And I'd also like to get clarity on any legal issues from our lawyers that have been raised. So, Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more inclined to, agree with Councillor Dowd. I think we've discussed this a lot, as Ms. LaForde has shared. We're not here to vote on any readings today. We're here to just provide some edits and tweaks that staff can come back with an actual draft. It doesn't limit the opportunity for community engagement and feedback, and it doesn't prevent us from making further edits on July 9th as well. What it does is it starts moving us a little bit further along versus taking another week and a half with limited motion. If Councillor Dow's got a page and a half of edits, I'd like to hear them since we're here instead of waiting another week and a half. Come July 9th, let's have a further discussion some more. Community has had a chance to provide some additional feedback, all the better. If we're ready to do readings on July 9th, then great. If we're not ready to do readings on July 9th, we can then defer those readings to August. But I'd like to see us move forward and start making some tweaks, and maybe there's some T's that aren't crossed or I's that weren't dotted properly, and we can make those edits now so that come July 9th, we have a more robust draft mode to either move to readings or move further along.
We have, before we call the motion, I see we have three more, Councillor Isakson, then Palm, and then Southcott.
Just a question through the mayor to staff with regards to a council versus committee of the whole. What we did previously was rather, when the mayor chaired the last workshop, rather than having motions, we did kind of shows of hands for each one. And I'm wondering if that gives you sufficient direction to feel like you could draft something with knowing the will of council quite clearly, where we actually tackle through, show of hands on each item that council members bring up.
Through the chair, yes, that's what we thought we did with this draft, where it was drafted based on the shows of hands in that session. I think having votes on items of dispute, if there are, is the best way to go about it moving forward, just so that we have exactly concrete motions to say that this is what you want. We have a vote. It's based on majority, because with several workshop sessions and a draft coming that what staff thought reflected those workshops, and it's apparent that it doesn't. So I think formal motions are going to be the best way to move forward.
I think, just a reflection on that. I think the difficulty that you've had is, I think at the first workshop, we didn't do show of hands quite a lot. And so it was hard maybe for staff to navigate the nods versus the shows of hands. So I think the shows of hands were helpful when the mayor did that last time. Anyways, thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Worship. Through the chair, I concur with Councillor Isakson, Councillor Elliott, and the mayor in terms of their input just now. And I think it would be very healthy to have a workshop with the public in full attendance so that they can raise their concerns at the same time we're dealing with this, because there's a lot of meat on the bone here. We spent 2 days reviewing this with all kinds of items. We need to spend a little more time, and there's no rush. I mean, the world is not going to end before we come to a resolution on this topic. So I'm all in favor of having another workshop with the public engaged so that we can get feedback, which is very, very important as we go forward with our procedures. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. My personal feeling is that we're not that far away, really. My sheet of questions and desire for notes with which I desire clarification, I don't think are that complicated. I also, and I suspect Councillor Doubt and I are not the only ones with sheets of notes and questions. Working on that, working on questions and points of clarification, to my understanding, fit much more appropriately into a committee format. I see by our schedule that we have 3 council meetings before UBCM. If we do come to what we understand to be an agreement, this is the question, should we not pass the bylaw, like for second third reading or first, second reading, have public exposure, and then so have this done before we really have to take, like, how many council meetings do we really have to take before we can pass this bylaw after we come to what we feel is an agreement? That's my question. What can we do at once for a bylaw?
Through the chair, you can do 2 readings, then there's the public notice period, then the third reading, and then adoption, which I believe has to happen at a second or a separate meeting. So 3 council meetings.
Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, so just reiterate why I would rather get on with it and do something right now. We've had workshop after workshop on this. The last 2 workshops in May 17th and May 30th, were open to the public. We had them in a small committee room upstairs, but they were televised down here. And every now and then I looked up at the screen to see how many of the members of the public were chomping at the bits in the room to have comment. There was nobody in the room. I think on the first one, there was a couple of people in the room for the first hour or so of the discussion. Then there was nobody there. Okay. We finally got to where we have a draft. It's the second time that we've had a new draft procedure bylaw come to a council meeting. I don't think council's ready to approve it. Myself, I have a number of amendments I'd like to make to it. And after we even get to that point, then we would start going through the bylaw approval process, which takes 3 readings anyway, and public comment can happen in there. But I'd like to get on with it and try to get a procedure bylaw in place rather than spend all of our mandate talking about what we'd like to do if we ever get around to doing it. So I'm opposed to the motion to delay this.
Councillor Elliott, did you have your hand up?
I did, thank you, Your Worship. So just one of the reasons I think we didn't have total clarity on where we had agreement in the first workshop is many of us hadn't had a chance to review some of the draft language early enough to fully realize exactly what we thought about it in that particular moment in time. And it was we understood that it was draft, and we come back and we would have another chance to discuss that. The problem with only making changes by motion is there isn't the opportunity for discussion to see where we might align better with a better, like, motions tend to fixate on whoever's making the motion's idea, and there isn't the conversation to allow us to come to a bit of a consensus before we make motions. And council meeting format is a little bit structured to favor documents that have been largely agreed, worked on prior to arriving at council. And so I think we need both. I think we need, now that we've had a good chance to look at the draft and have been considering how this would work or how that would work, it would help us to have a committee of the whole or workshop type conversation around some of the pieces. And I do think special meetings are great for firming that up. And I think that's what we were trying to do today. We don't get an awful lot of opportunity to talk to one another because we have to do that in public, and it's only at these meetings that we get a chance to do that. So the struggle I'm having here, here's my question. Can we move forward today and still make draft changes even though you're working on the bylaw? Can we simultaneously do some of this work? Or do we have to get it right here in the draft first before we can start moving on the bylaw?
I'll let Ms. Laporte start.
Through the chair, I'm not sure I understand your question. You're wanting to do what 2 things simultaneously? Have staff work on the draft and ask questions?
And also have another conversation that might tweak some of the language, which could also tweak the bylaw a bit while you're working on it. But anyway, I guess that's my question.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
It was a question I had of staff.
Oh, okay.
Through the
Okay.
chair, if I might answer, I think sometimes, years ago, there was no such thing as committee of the whole. Every council meeting you get to have discussion as you wish. It's perhaps a format or misunderstanding that at council meetings, special council meetings, you can have discussion. You don't have to make motions, but they're there for you. What we're looking for is you've got a draft. There's things where maybe some of you agree, some of you don't, to give us the clarity to come back with something that we can put forward for the process. And the bylaw process is designed to get public input, as Councillor Dowd noted. So there's nothing stopping you from having the conversations today and giving us direction. I just wanted to point out it doesn't have to be before committee of the wholes were a trendy thing. And you'll have heard George Cup and others talk about their perspectives on that. I just want to make sure that you know you can have that conversation here. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you here. Just a quick clarification question before we vote, as it may impact a vote. Should we discuss and make some edits today and staff comes back with a draft on the 9th, and in between now and the 9th, members of the public give us some nuggets that council feels maybe it's worth a motion to edit, there's nothing preventing us from making those edits again on the 9th and then deferring the draft to a future meeting to allow staff to edit those updates as well, right?
Through the chair. So certainly if you provide some direction today, we would come back with that direction incorporated into a new draft. To speak to what Councillor Elliott was saying in terms of working on the draft, at this point, there isn't, like, staff wouldn't have any other work to do because we don't have any other direction to change anything. In terms of feedback from the public, staff wouldn't take direction from the public. Council would receive feedback from the public and then get that direction from council. Yeah, I'm not sure the best way to, or another way to go about it other than getting motions as feedback. I understand the style of a workshop can be helpful in some ways, but just in terms of making the decisions to either have something or not have something, because there is disagreement or questions among the group that we just, yeah, we would need more specific direction.
We have had a robust conversation. Do you have something new to add, Councillor Dowd?
I had my hand up for a while. And my question was, we seem to have devolved into a question and answer session. I was going to ask staff to read back the motion that's on the floor, so when we vote, we'll know what we're voting on.
Through the chair, the motion on the floor is to refer the draft, and I do want to confirm with Councillor Palm if it's the draft as presented in the agenda with no changes, that's the motion.
Yeah, what we have before us, but
to July 9th.
Your Worship, just one more point, because you made it, and I second the point you made. Before this comes back to us, once we defer it, I would also like, whenever we're going to talk about it, to pass it by legal, for a legal opinion as to the legality of what's incorporated in it. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and I'm going to ask all in favor. Opposed? The motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 4.1, which is Intergovernmental Relations Working Group Update. Councillor Isakson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have updates from the working group that was established through a council motion previously. Their working group membership has been defined, and so based on previous motion at council, Councillors Almeida, Dowd, and myself are representatives from the City of Pell River. The 3 members from Tla'amin Nation are Executive Councillors Blaney, Johnson, and Luafoa. We had a first meeting, and the summary of that first meeting is that we met and enjoyed a potluck. We talked broadly about working group purpose. We explored ideas for a working group mandate or terms of reference, but we'll come back to a future working group meeting to continue the conversation. And just as a reminder, anything that is requires a council decision would come back to council as a recommendation for council to decide, but there's nothing that has come to council to decide on at this point. So it's just an update.
Any questions, Councillor Palm?
Yes, Your Worship, but when I saw this on the agenda, I had a couple of questions that came to mind right away. I think I'm correct in saying that these meetings are behind closed doors and they're kind of an in-camera meeting. Am I correct?
Through the chair, they're not council meetings because there's not a quorum of council. So there's no such thing as closed or open with these meetings.
So my question that came to mind was this. It has two bullets, working group membership, which you have outlined here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second bullet refers to first meeting summary.
Mm-hmm.
So in future reporting, could we have something written in terms of receiving the agenda so that we can peruse what topics were discussed in the future since they're not closed meetings?
Yes, thank you. The intention was to have what the words that I the words that I shared written in the agenda. And so hopefully that will happen in future meetings.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move to a motion to go to a closed meeting. Councillor Armida.
I move that council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under section 90.1 J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. We will now take a 5-minute adjournment.
Doing questions?
Oh, before, thank you very much. Mr. Galinsky, my apologies.
Thanks, Your Worship. I appreciate the opportunity. My first question is with regard to item 3.1, Property Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund Bylaw. Today, there were 3 readings that were given to the Reserve Fund Bylaw, and I'm wondering when it is anticipated there will be a motion for adoption of this bylaw.
Through the chair, Mr. Galinsky, that will be on July 11th at the next council meeting. Thank you.
I appreciate the response from the Chief Financial Officer. Thank you. With regard to item 4.1, intergovernmental 3.2 Council Procedure Bylaw, I didn't catch who was opposed to the motion that was put forward. Perhaps the councillors could indicate their opposition. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Those were my questions, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Galinsky. Anyone else in the audience that has a question?
Good afternoon, Ted Vizzuti. Just a question regarding the Intergovernmental Relations Working Group. Can the citizens of Paul River, anybody from it, apply to be on this group? A taxpayer, just to sit in, and if it's not a closed meeting, whatever type of meeting, if it's an open meeting, the public allowed to sit at it?
Does our corporate officer have an answer?
Through the chair, this is in a meeting put on by staff, so I would refer to perhaps Councillor Isakson or another councillor in the working group.
Councillor Doubt.
The working group is one that's established by a motion of council. It has 3 members of the Tla'amin Nation on it and 3 members of council. It's not a council meeting. It's not a public meeting. So the 6 people are the ones who attend.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if the working group has things that they want council to consider, they'll land on a council agenda and council will discuss them in a public and open quorum or as appropriate to whatever is coming forward. Since it's not a meeting of council, it isn't considered there's no necessary reason for it to be open. It's a conversation between 3 members of council and the Common Nation doing some work. If they have something they would like council to consider, they would bring that forward through the appropriate channels, subject to all openness of the rules apply.
Would it not?
So the public could then see the discussion around that item when it comes forward to council.
Okay. You are all aware of perception of what goes on, and I just thought maybe this is one way of getting rid of some of that perception of what actually happens by opening it up and allowing the public to sit in on these and watch or listen. May not have voice, but maybe in the future it might have a voice. We've got lots to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions from the audience?
So I'm just wondering if
Please introduce yourself so that
Diane,
everybody online
sorry,
can.
Diane Sparks. Just wondering if everybody got the brief that was emailed to them today. There were some legal aspects in that brief with regards to the amendments on the bylaws. And I think that there should be some kind of legal counsel done with the city, brought to the city, because if you read the brief, there's legal aspects that are contravening the charter rights.
I'm just going to interrupt because it really has to be a question.
Oh,
and the
okay.
question,
Well,
the question that you asked, I think it can answer. And Ms.
Is there going to
Seo,
be
correct me if
a
I'm wrong.
legal?
Yes, Councillor Palm and others had mentioned that aspect, and as we move forward, that will be addressed.
So there will be some legal consultation on the changes that they want to make to the bylaws, right?
Well, I know, for example, I'm seeing our CEO shake her head, yes, and I certainly would request that as being.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mark Hassett, taxpayer of Paul River. Mine is for the working group with Clom and First Nations. Is your plan, after you're finished, to still go to Victoria with them to talk to them? Or is there any intentions on going on? Because if I remember right, when it was first talked about, you were going to go out and then carry on and maybe go on to Victoria. And I'm just wondering if that's correct.
I have no idea what you're talking about Victoria.
Okay, so you're not planning on proceeding?
I just say,
that's fine.
There was no indication at all in any of the discussions so far. So,
okay, that's all I was questioning. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Do we have anybody online? No. All right. Thank you very much. And we will now move into a closed session. In Powell River.